Hello, and welcome to Cloaker's Education Foundation, where we provide quality content for amazing teachers and students. If you're joining us from our previous video on the different types of political systems, welcome back. And if this is your first time, we're glad you're here. This is our U.S. government series, and this lesson is on the U.S. Constitution. Before we begin, don't forget to check out our resources on TPT and a link to free guided notes for this lesson linked in the description below. Now let's dive in. Now our Constitution begins with the preamble. This is where the Founding Fathers set up the purpose of our government. And the preamble goes like this: We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Now let's break down some pieces of that. We the people means we that give the consent of the governed. We the people is everyone. Now, historians and politicians will argue when this document was first drafted, we the people meant white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males who owned land. And history backs that up. But as our nation has progressed and grown, we've taken strides, and that has become a more inclusive term. First, it was including Catholics into that too. Then it was you didn't have to own land in order to be voters and be represented. Then we increased that when we had the Civil War and the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment in many states passing that, and we had the Civil Rights Movement to include minority rights. Then we expanded that with the 19th Amendment to include women, and recently taken strides to include more gay rights. And so that's a constantly expanding term. Now, in order to form a more perfect union, we recognize that our nation is deeply flawed, and we are taking steps to become a more perfect place. Perfection will never be achieved because it's a constantly moving target. But we can take steps to get closer to what perfection looks like. Now, to do this, establish justice. So establishing a fair court system and fair justice system that works for everyone, not just the wealthy or the elites or businesses. Ensure domestic tranquility. Means we need to provide for the general people, make sure there's no civil unrest. Provide for the common defense. We take this to mean our military. Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, all those brave men and women who put their life in harm's way to protect our nation. Promote the general welfare, providing things like protection from fires and police departments, providing schools and public education, to provide food stamps, Social Security. All of these are examples that promote the general welfare, to take care of the people. And to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, meaning when we want to achieve all of these things, not just for ourselves, but our posterity means our children, our future generations. So to achieve these things, we establish this Constitution of the United States. Now, the Constitution is broken up into several parts. Let's dive into those. Starting with Article 1, which focuses on the legislative branch. Section 1 of Article 1 states that all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States, which shall consist of the Senate and the House. Now, this was that bicameral legislation we talked about in our previous videos. Section 2 says no person shall be a representative who has not attained the age of 25. So we're setting requirements in order to be in the House of Representatives. The age of 25, a citizen for 7 years, and an inhabitant in the state which they are chosen. Right? All of these are requirements to be in the House of Representatives. Now, Section 3 has to deal with the Senate specifically. Now, it starts off, the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof a 6-year term. Each senator shall have 1 vote. Now, each state gets 2. The governors and state legislatures used to choose senators. However, with the passage of the 17th Amendment, senators are now directly elected by the people. Continues, 1/3 of the senators will be up for election every 6 years. So 6 years, this turns out about every 2 years we have elections and 1/3 of the Senate is elected. No person shall be a senator who has not attained the age of 35. So this is setting requirements for senators, having to be 35 years old, having been a citizen for 9 years, and of course being an inhabitant of the state of which you're chosen. It continues, the vice president of the U.S. shall be the president of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless equally divided. He is or she is the tiebreaker if the Senate is tied. Now, this has happened a few times. It's not all that common. Usually one side has the majority. Now, the Senate also has the sole power to try all impeachments. Now, when a sitting for that purpose, they shall be on an oath or affirmation, and when the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside. No person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. So they need a majority to not only be there, they need a majority to convict the person of whatever crime for impeachment, and it has very rarely happened that someone has been impeached and removed from office. Now, quite a few presidents have been impeached, which just is a term for they are formally pressing a criminal charge. That is one legal definition for impeachment, but very few people have been impeached and removed from office. We're going to skip to section 6 and section 7. Now, there are college classes that are semesters long over the Constitution. You could spend years studying this and breaking down each individual part, examples, and the history of everything, which is incredible. However, we do not have the luxury of that time, and so with your permission, I'm just going to hit some of the major topics within this lesson. So, section 6 states that senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services ascertained by law, paid out by the Treasury, and in all cases except treason, felony, or breach of the peace, they're going to get that. Basically, this is setting salary for the senators and the representatives. Section 7, all bills raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. So the House controls the purse. A bill must be passed with both houses before it can reach to the president. If it reaches the president, he can either approve the law and he can veto it and return it back to the House with objections, or he can just say no. If Congress is in session, it may become law within 10 days. If the president vetoes it, Congress can overrule the president's veto power if they come back with a 2/3 majority passing the amendment or passing the law. Now, Section 8 of the Constitution has to deal with finances and money. First, starting off, Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, and pay for the debts for things like common defense and general welfare. This was one of the major flaws in the Articles of Confederation. It also gives Congress the authority to borrow money on credit for the United States, to regulate trade with foreign nations, other states, and the Indian tribes within the United States and next to the U.S., to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. So this is the process of someone becoming a U.S. citizen. It also has subject laws on bankruptcies. It gives Congress the authority to coin money, which was another flaw in the Articles of Confederation because Virginia was using a different currency than New Jersey. To establish post office and roads, to promote the progress of science and the useful arts by securing authors and inventors exclusive rights to their perspectives and drawings. So we're going to protect technology and innovation, and to define and punish the practices of piracy and felonies committed on the high seas. These are just some of the aspects within Article 1, Section 8, most of them, again, having to deal with money and the authority of the legislative branch. Article 1, Section 8 does include more items than just that. It gives Congress the power to declare war, to raise and support an army, to provide and maintain a navy, to suppress insurrections or foreign invasions. It allows them to have a militia within the nation, and it allows them to, of course, pass laws that are deemed necessary and proper for the foregoing powers, the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branch. So if you are doing our free guided notes that are found in the description below, go ahead and star Article 1, Section 8. That's a rather big section when it comes to the test. Section 9 within the Constitution goes into a lot more of laws, especially with the judicial system. So the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless in the case of rebellion or invasion. Habeas corpus meaning show me the body. If you're going to be arrested for a crime, you're brought to jail and then you're taken to the courthouse and you have to appear in person. And we've only ever suspended this a few times. Lincoln, for example, suspended it during the Civil War so that he could arrest traitors and conspirators, but he didn't necessarily have to take them to trial right away because there was a greater threat, like Washington, D.C. being invaded. No bill or attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. This means you cannot punish someone for doing something if they do it before it is made illegal. So, for example, the 18th Amendment, which banned alcohol, the year before that happened, all these people would go out and have parties, drinking, getting absolutely wasted because it was going to be illegal. But once that law is passed, you can't go back and punish them because it was legal when they did it, or there wasn't a law when they did it. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. So we're not going to tax exports leaving the nation because that would kind of damage our manufacturing and economy. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue from one port or state over the other. We're not going to show favoritism between the states. Number 5, no title or nobility shall be granted to a person of the United States. No person holding any office or profit trust in them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept any present office, title, whatever, from a foreign state, king, or entity. So you're not allowed to accept gifts from a foreign entity unless you have the consent of Congress. Now, Section 10 of the Constitution, no state shall, without consent of Congress, lay any duty on tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, or enter any agreement or compact with another state or foreign entity. So basically, states cannot act as an independent nation, making alliance with foreign entities or keeping a private military unless they're invaded. So Texas cannot make a military alliance with Mexico and Cuba without the consent of Congress. And at that point, Congress is going to want all 50 states to have that military agreement. Article 2 dives into the executive branch and the setup. So the executive branch is the President of the United States. He shall serve in his office a term of 4 years, together with the Vice President chosen as the same term. Electing our President, electors will vote if there's a tie. The House of Representatives will elect the President, and the Senate will elect the VP. No person except a natural-born citizen can be president, so you have to be a citizen at birth to become the United States. You cannot be a naturalized citizen or become a U.S. citizen and then become president. You also have to be the age of 35 and be a resident within the U.S. for the last 14 years. Continuing with Section 1, I'm just going to kind of summarize that big point and not read it word for word for you. This says that if the president shall be unable to continue, whether it is through death or resignation or for whatever means, the vice president shall take over, and he shall run and, of course, appoint a new vice president and act in that office accordingly. We've seen this when presidents have passed away, like when McKinley passed away and when Harding passed away, the VP took over. We've seen it when presidents have been assassinated, like Lincoln and Kennedy, the VP took over. And we've seen it in cases like Richard Nixon, who, when he resigns from office, his vice president, Gerald Ford, will take over and continue. Continue, it says the president shall at stated times receive for his service compensation, which shall not be increased or diminished during his period. So effectively, he is going to get paid for his job. It is a $500,000 effectively. Dak Prescott of the Cowboys makes more in a season than the president does, which is kind of crazy to think about. Whatever your thoughts are on the Cowboys, that he makes more than the president. Now, The salary cannot increase or decrease during his term, and so if they vote for a pay raise, it goes into effect in the next election cycle. Continuing to sections 2 and 3 of the Constitution. Now, I'm just going to summarize these points. The president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy. He is the supreme military commander of the nation. And bullet point 2, he shall by the power appoint the judges of the Supreme Court, and they will, of course, be confirmed by the Supreme Court. Now, he does appoint many judges as well, and they are confirmed, but we specifically are pointing out here the Supreme Court. He appoints the new Supreme Court justices when they step down or pass away. And he shall from time to time give Congress information. So he's addressing Congress in the State of the Union, telling them what the goals are for the year, how they've done, how they've progressed. And of course, this is broadcasted live when it is done in the U.S. in modern day. Article 3 of the Constitution has to deal with the judicial branch, specifically the Supreme Court. Now, Section 1 states that the judicial power in the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and such inferior courts. Okay, these would be like the Court of Appeals, circuit judges, things. The judges both of the Supreme Court and the inferior court shall hold office during good behavior and shall, at stated times, receive compensation. They're going to get paid for their work. No one in government works for free, despite what they try to make you believe. Now, their salary cannot be diminished during their continuance in office because the Supreme Court is elected for life. And so they do not have to run for re-election, and there's a very specific reason for that. We want the Supreme Court to make the decisions that are right for the nation and for the future, not what is popular because they're worried about an election in the future. If the Supreme Courts and their judges were elected, then they would make different decisions because they want to appease the masses rather than passing what is fair and just. So when we talk about judicial power and the laws and equity, this section 2 is going to kind of affirm where there is federal power in the court cases. So cases affecting ambassadors, public ministers, consuls, cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, controversies when the United States is a party. So if the nation is on trial, that the Supreme Court will be the one to handle that. Controversies between two or more states. So if Maryland and Virginia get into it, or Texas and Oklahoma, when it is between a state and citizens of another state. So if Texas versus someone in Louisiana, that is going to be a federal court case between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under different states, and of course between states and citizens of foreign entities. That goes to a federal court case, federal judge. So Section 2 continued. All court cases, when it has an ambassador and a state as a party, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction. They have since kind of passed that down to now there's federal judges that hear a lot of the court cases, and the Supreme Court pretty much acts as a court of appeals or an appellate jurisdiction where they can come in and overrule if they decide that someone was not treated fairly or that the lower courts made the wrong decisions. And a trial of all crimes with the exception of impeachment shall be tried by jury, and such trial shall be held in the state where the crime has been committed. So if you commit a crime in Texas and then you flee to Louisiana or Oklahoma, they will bring you back to Texas for your trial. You will not be tried in the state you run to. Sections 3 and Section 4 of Article 3 have to deal with treason. Now, these two clauses define treason, set the proof and the punishment. They narrowly define treason as levying war against the United States or giving aid and comfort to the nation's enemies. It sets the burden of proof required for conviction, either the testimony of two witnesses to the same act or a confession in open court. Congress also sets the punishment in this by saying that no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood, meaning you cannot punish the traitor's family for their treason, and no forfeiture of property beyond the traitor's life. Article 4 has to deal with states' relations. So Section 1 states full faith and credit shall be given in each state to public acts, records, judicial proceedings. So for example, if you get your driver's license and you leave to California or Texas, Florida, New York, wherever you want to go, you get there, your driver's license is valid in that state. It is a legal document given to you by your state. Now, if you move, they will require you to update your driver's license with your current residence. That is different than I am passing through the state, I am still able to drive. Okay, that is full faith and credit to government documents. Section 2, citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in several states. So when you travel from New York to California, you are given all of the same privileges and immunities of the citizens that are there. And lastly, a person charged in any state with treason, felony, or a crime who flees from justice and found in another state shall be delivered and removed to the state having jurisdiction of the crime. So again, if you rob a bank in Texas and you flee to Nebraska, they will extradite you and pull you and bring you back into Texas for your trial once you are caught. To summarize Section 3 in Article 4, new states may be added to the Union through Congress, though no new state shall be erected from within the jurisdictions of another. So you cannot create a new state from part of an existing one or merging two states unless both the state legislatures and Congress agree. Now, there have been instances, such as during the Civil War, when Virginia seceded from the Union. Several of the western counties, now known as West Virginia, took a referendum and chose not to secede, and so they petitioned Congress, and we had the creation of a new state. And there's arguments that stretch the interpretation of Section 3. There is also a movement in Oregon known as the Greater Idaho Movement, where there's 12 counties within Oregon that want to join the state of Idaho, and while Idaho has shown interest, Oregon has not expressed any approval, concern, nor have they been formally asked by the counties. Again, we are just hitting some of the major points as we work through for the sake of time and trying to get this down in a time-friendly manner. Article 5 has to deal with the process of amending the Constitution, and it states whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, they shall propose amendments to the Constitution, or when 2/3 of the states call for a convention to add an amendment to the Constitution. In either case, all states shall vote. They shall not be deprived when it comes to voting for an amendment either in the House or within the Senate. Article 6 is quite a large article because it encompasses many things, everything from prior debts, national laws on supremacy, and oaths of office. Now, prior debts, because these states are in severe debt because of the revolution, this new Constitution is going to encompass all of the states' debts as one federal debt. And so the national government assumes the states' debts. And this is a part of Hamilton's economic plan for our nation. When it comes to national supremacy, the Constitution states that the Constitution itself is the authority of the United States and is the supreme law of the land. And judges in every state are bound to the Constitution. When someone is sworn into public office, whether it is the president, whether it is a judge or someone serving on the school board or soldiers who are defending this country, their oaths include a line, for example, the Army Oath of Enlistment. I state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, they are not there to defend the people, the politicians, or your property. They will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And that can be quite a hot take in this 21st century. And that wraps up our lesson, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check us out on Teachers Pay Teachers, YouTube, and Rumble. Our next lesson on the Bill of Rights right there on your screen is just a click away. I'll see you there.